morning, Nick with Away Knowledge. This video I'm going to talk about the kids, the youth, the lads, the charges, whatever you want to call them that we work with every single day. And I want to talk about how it is that they get to us at the Oregon Youth Authority, right? Because it's Monday, I'm rolling into work, and I show up to whoever the state, a judge, determines needs to be there. Meaning I didn't pick them. I didn't say, give me Jones and Roberts and Jackson, and you can let Miller and Holmesley stay home today. It's not how it works, right? When we show up to work, we're working with the kids that the community and a judge says needs to be with us. So I just want to set the stage for that, right? And, at the same time, the kids didn't ask to come there either, right? Now, of course, you can make the argument that their behavior was asking for them to be placed there, and I won't necessarily argue that. But you know what I mean. The kid didn't volunteer today and say, yeah, send me to McLaren. That's where I want to be. Now we do know that there's knuckleheads in courts that'll say stuff like that, right? Okay, they're not smart enough to act in their own best interest. So that's the stage that's set. We didn't pick them, and they didn't volunteer, but yet here they are. So how does a kid make it that far down the road and to need that type of intervention, the type of intervention that we supply? Well, it was about a month ago, I was present at a team meeting, and I was asked to do just an informal talk, you can call it a training, on trauma-informed care. And I was happy to do that, no problems. But the way that I led into that was taking another look at the ACEs study. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan, or haven't historically been a huge fan of the ACEs study in terms of its practicality, in terms of it actually leading to something that's useful. It's mostly a hindsight correlation study. But there's new momentum and energy behind the ACEs study, and a lot of people are picking it up and actually taking it to the next level where we can make use of the information in a positive human development sort of aspect when we're working with kids. But that's for another video. But so the ACEs study has 10 items on it, or the ACEs quiz that you can take has 10 questions on it. And basically what the questions are, they are experiences that you may have had growing up as a child. So the ACEs stands for Adversive Childhood Experiences Score. ACEs. Adversive Childhood Experience Score. So these 10 questions, if you answer yes to any of them, gives you a point. And there's questions, that are pretty straight out. Were you sexually abused as a child? Bing, there's a point. Have you had a parent that's been to prison, or somebody that you lived with has been to prison? Bing, there's a point, right? And so, were you, ever in fear of your physical safety in the home that you grew up in? Bing, there's a point, right? So there's 10 items that are like that on this quiz, and based on how you score, what we know through the ACEs study, which was done by Kaiser, you can Google it. It's got tens of thousands of participants now, so the data is pretty robust. But what we know is the more points that you score on the ACEs, the higher your overall health risk is going to be. Okay, so just 1 point on the ACEs score puts you at a high risk for starting to smoke, for example. So something like you're 20% more likely to be a smoker if you have 1 point on the ACEs quiz. Okay. So I think that the cutoff scores are 0 to 1, 2 to 3, and then 4. Okay? So that means if you scored 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it puts you in the highest risk category according to the ACEs. And what does that mean? It means that you are looking at early death. It means that your chances of developing cancer, diabetes, lung issues, high blood pressure, stroke are much, much higher compared to the rest of the people walking around. Okay? So when I was at the staff meeting and I showed them the ACEs, and I asked them, I said, so think about the typical kid that comes to your living unit. Where do you think that they score? Now that you know what all these questions are, think about the kids that you work with every single day. What would their score be on average, would you think? And one person jumped forward and said, they're 10s. All of them are 10s. And there was some general consensus around the table. Okay, that the kids that this particular staff team are working with every single day, they are getting the feeling that if they were to give those kids the ACEs, that they would score a 10. Wow. Let's let that sink in for a little bit. Okay, so that means that they've been physically abused. That means that they've been sexually abused. It means that they regularly spent time fearing for their lives. That means that they had people that were supposed to take care of them were in and out of prison, and on and on and on. That they had drug users within the family. Okay, so these are the kids, right? Going back to the entry of this video, that wind up coming to us. Okay, so if that's their childhood, that's how they were brought into this world. That's how they were trained up to be. Doesn't it make a little bit of sense that they can be a handful, that they can be at times dangerous, that their behavior is chaotic and unpredictable? Doesn't that make some sense then? Right? And doesn't it make some sense that in response to being triggered, that the behavior that they show us is what they've been taught and trained to do? Some of it comes out of survival. Some of it comes out of skill deficit. They don't know what else to do differently. Some of it comes from ignorance, that there is a better way to handle a trigger in the environment, right? Versus they're doing it because they're delinquent. They're doing it because they know exactly what right and wrong is. They're choosing to do this. They do it because they're trying to be a gang member. They're doing it because they're just defiant. Okay? That's conventional wisdom. That's what Dr. Stuart Ablon with collaborative problem solving would say is conventional wisdom, right? Kids that get locked up in juvenile facilities, it's because they're delinquent and defiant, and they just need to learn that when they violate society's norms of right and wrong, they're going to get punished. Okay, perhaps, right? But when you take an ACEs kid that's probably a 10, I don't think it's conventional wisdom that's going to guide us to the pathway out for them. Just my hunch, just my experience based on 20 years of doing the work. Okay. So I just want you to think about that for a second. That when you have chaotic, problematic, unsafe, dangerous behavior from the kids that make it to us, it might be because of all the stuff, all the crud that they've had to endure in their life to this point. Now, that doesn't excuse the behavior. Okay, I'm not taking a extreme supportive stance here, right? I'm trying to make a bid for a developmental stance on the 2x2. Okay, so PhD 2 training has been almost entirely rolled out by the time that this video comes out. So I'm talking about the upper right square of our approach to developmental, okay, versus compliance and supportive. Okay, so now that we know that there's reasons other than just straight out defiance that a kid may be acting the way that they do, okay, that's not an excuse, right? Because they, by and large, came to us because they hurt people, right? Or they did significant amount of property damage, that people's lives were deeply impacted, right? That's primarily how kids get to us anymore. So that's a serious problem, right? And our approach with PhD is to view that problem as a skill deficit. And this is why we graft heavily into collaborative problem solving. When Dr. Ablon and company say kids will do well if they can, and if they can't, something's getting in the way, then it's our job as staff, as facilities, as an agency to get really, really good about figuring out the skill deficit that it's leaving the child in a place to where they act inappropriately. Okay? Skill versus will. Kids will do well if they can. If they can't, something's getting in the way. So basically everything that we expect from them can be broken down into discrete skills. And I know that over, the last 5-6 years, we have really been, talking about skills and expecting skills to be identified in case plans, and we want the youth to know what skills they're working on. And I have to own that we really haven't done all that could be done to explain this to staff. Okay, but using manners is a skill, right? And if you have your own kids, think about it. Think about how many repetitions it took with your own children to get them to a point to where they would say please and thank you on their own without being prompted every single time. Okay. Our kids probably didn't have that as an expectation. In fact, they were probably taught and trained and had modeled for them very unpleasant things to say to people. That's what was modeled for them. Okay, so they say it takes like 4,000 repetitions during childhood to get a behavior to sink in and to be automatic, and that you don't need to prompt it. Okay, think about it, that's probably an ACEs 0 to 1 type kid, right? An ACEs 2 to 3 type kid, they are probably going to have not only an absence of a certain skill, pro-social skill, but they're probably going to have a pit that's been dug for them and that they've been placed in around that particular behavior. Okay, so part of our work is to get them out of that pit, and then we're at baseline, and now we have to build in the skill pro-socially. So that's why it's really hard with some of the kids, because not only do they have zero baseline for whatever that behavior is, they actually have problematic behaviors that they're used to relying on, and we're going to have to basically untrain them out of that. Okay, so let's cover what we've talked about so far. So we didn't pick the kids, they didn't volunteer. By and large, their backgrounds are setting them up for failure, and it's our job to turn that around, to turn the corner. And we're doing that work when the community hasn't been able to do that, right? So it takes a lot before a kid just comes to us. There's a lot of things that go on in the community in terms of intervention prior to that county level PO staffing that case with OYA and then taking it to a judge and saying, Your Honor, this kid is beyond our ability to assist. Here are the interventions that we've tried, and yet the behavior still hasn't changed enough, and we are recommending that this youth be placed in Oregon Youth Authority. I know that's a drastic oversimplification of how the process goes. Sorry, field staff, if you're coming across this. But anyway, I just want to set that up again, right? That we didn't pick them, they didn't volunteer, and in fact, they've been through lots of layers of intervention prior to coming to us. So these kids end up proving to be some of the most difficult kids that the state has to offer to work with. Okay, so just know that. That's why the work is hard. Okay, if it was easy, they wouldn't need places like us. They wouldn't need the Oregon Youth Authority. Okay, but that's what we sign up to do when we work for OYA. We sign up to work with the most challenging, damaged, unsafe kids that the state has to offer. That's what we do. That's what we get paid to do. And if you can accept that and learn to take that as a positive challenge and adapt that in your mindset as you're coming into work every single day, right? Change is slow, progress is slow with these kids, right? Their brains are developing. I heard Dr. Perry say, Bruce Perry, that typical adolescent development is 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But with a trauma impacted brain, drug impacted brain, you're talking 1 step forward, 5 steps back. And that's what we see frequently, and that's what grinds on us as staff. We wonder if the certain kid's ever going to get it. And that's why the work can be tough. Here's the way that I view it. Any of those kids that we can help push forward in a positive way, we're doing work that the rest of the state couldn't do. We're doing work that the kids' parents weren't able to do. And again, I'm not trying to blame or shame anybody, although I do think that there's some responsibility that needs to be taken, prior to kids coming to OYA. But that's the reality of it, right? That kids will do well if they can, and if they can't, something's getting in the way. Those systems prior to us weren't able to really dig down and find out what else was getting in the way, and then backwards engineer that into a skill development plan to help the youth improve their behavior, develop appropriately, have a positive self-concept. Okay. So that's our kids in OYA. That's a little bit of a primer for skills and what skills are and why we need skills and the philosophy behind PhD being so focused on skills. I think that I'll leave it there for this video, and be sure I'll do some future videos more specifically about skills and more specifically about treatment. But I think that's good enough for now. Kind of giving the backdrop for how do those kids get to us? What are we really being asked to do with the kids by society? And why do we emphasize skills so much? So I hope that helped. I hope that informed your work that you do for OYA. And if that's the case, let me know in a comment. Let me know that you're seeing this and they're getting value out of these videos. And I'll keep cranking them out. All right, this is Nick, OYA Knowledge. See you next time.